Hey guys, coming at you today with a super simple recipe, but it is one that I use almost every day in the bakery. It's a keto buttercream frosting recipe. And there's a couple different variations. I'm going to show you how to pipe on some cupcakes because I'm making my mom's wedding cupcakes today. So I thought I'd show you how to color it and pipe it and some tips and tricks on this keto frosting. So let's get started. Now, back when I did buttercreams and when I do non-keto buttercreams, I've always found the best ratio is actually half butter, half vegetable shortening. I don't do that anymore for keto because keto a lot of people don't want any kind of vegetable oils or shortenings. So I use straight butter now, and what my ratio used to be was a pound of butter, a pound of vegetable shortening, and 2 pounds of powdered sugar. Now that I don't do powdered sugar and vegetable shortening, I just do straight butter and a powdered monk fruit erythritol blend. I have my scale set up here just to see how much it actually weighs. Basically, we're doing half a recipe. Now, I have found that you can make this frosting with powdered monk fruit erythritol and powdered bocha sweet. You cannot use powdered allulose because it makes the frosting wet. So I'm going to sift about 2 cups of powdered sweetener. It is 10 ounces. With non-keto recipe, I would use 16, but we might not even need all this. This is not Locanto powdered monk fruit erythritol. This is So Nourished. But this is like, it creates a cloud. Unlike the Locanto, it creates a little bit of dust, but this is like, it gets over everything when you sift it. So while this is cheaper, I don't prefer it. I think it's actually more powdered than Locanto. I'm like inhaling sweetener right now. So that's ready to go. I'm gonna whip up this pound of butter. So it's a pound of butter or 4 sticks or 448 grams of super soft butter. Butter can be left out at room temperature for a couple of weeks without getting moldy, as long as you're not cross-contaminating it with anything. Like if it's just kept in the package, you'll be fine. So I always have at least 2 pounds of butter out at all times, sometimes even more. Stop and scrape down a couple times, and then as this is going, you can add powdered sweetener on a low speed as you're whipping. This is what I would normally do with regular powdered sugar, but because this is so ridiculously like making a cloud everywhere, I'm just going to add 1 cup at a time. Hopefully that'll make it so it's not super cloudy for the entire time it's whipping. So as you can see, it still looks a lot like butter. Can't use just straight stevia, pure stevia powder or monk fruit powder, because you need a bulk of a powdered sweetener in order to make it into a frosting. If you just add some powdered stevia or liquid stevia to butter, it's just going to taste like sweet butter. It's not going to taste like a frosting. You need the big amount of powdered sweetener in there. I use less than I would for a regular buttercream. I get it to the point where it doesn't taste like butter anymore. It's not super sweet, and I'll add a little bit of powdered stevia to it. So I'm going to add another cup of powdered sweetener to this. You see there's still some left in the bowl. So after I sifted it, 2 cups. We're going to whip that again. Start slow, even though no matter what, this stuff goes everywhere. Now it's looking more like a frosting, less like butter. But we do still have to whip this up quite a bit before it becomes a frosting. Another thing you really need for this is a little bit of airiness in the butter and sweetener in order to get it to be more frosting-like, not just a clump of butter. I'm going to whip this until it's nice and light and fluffy. You definitely gotta stop and scrape down a couple of times You can see there's more yellowy butter there compared to the inside. Okay, it's getting light and fluffy. At this point, I use this base and add whatever flavorings I need that day. So, I've added peanut butter to this, I've added caramel extract, raspberry jam, raspberry extract. Just gotta be careful not to add too much of a liquid. Basically is rule of thumb here, like don't add a ton of raspberry jam, just enough to color it, and then do some raspberry extract. Anything that's real thick, like peanut butter, you can just add a decent amount of peanut butter and make it taste peanut buttery. You can also add MCT oil powders that are flavored to flavor this. Lots of different options here. If you want chocolate, you add cocoa powder. I'm gonna whip this up a little bit more and then we're gonna taste it and add some powdered stevia. Okay, we'll give it a little taste. Still definitely buttery tasting. There's a tiny bit of cooling, but not too bad. That's kind of the balance you want here. Like you want it just to taste like frosting. Because if it tastes too much like powdered erythritol, it's going to be very cooling because there's just so much in there. I'm going to start with a half teaspoon of stevia powder. You can also use monk fruit powder. Stop and scrape down. Now, unfortunately, this is not a buttercream that will harden on a cookie. I am still working on that. I have tried several things already, and I already know what I'm going to try more of. I just haven't had a chance to experiment enough, but I think I know what I need to do to make it a crusting buttercream. But this will not harden on your cake. It'll harden in the refrigerator for sure, but at room temperature it won't be hard. Another try, see how much more stevia. Probably do another half a teaspoon. If you want to know all about sweeteners, I'll put a link up there to my sweeteners video where I answered a bunch of these questions. Do another half teaspoon. Oh, we also have to add, start with a half a tablespoon of vanilla. I never usually measure, so I'm measuring for you guys. If you have either pure or imitation, here's where you want to use pure. That is tasting good. Still a tiny bit buttery though, so I'm going to add one more half teaspoon of stevia. So that'll be 2 teaspoons of stevia altogether. You can also do liquid stevia, which would be a different measurement to this. This should be enough for at least 24 cupcakes, if not more. I'm going to add another half tablespoon of vanilla. I think we're going to call it good. A little bit more vanilla flavor. I did one more scrape down. I'm going to let this go. I'll keep a timer on how long it takes. Then I'm going to let this whip for to get it nice and super light. So I had that going for about 5 minutes. It's definitely increased in volume. I think it's good to go. Okay, had to run upstairs because I was looking for this specific tip. It is a Wilton 1M. I'm not sure if there's an equivalent to that in any other brand. I will try to look it up and put it here if there is. I bought this specifically for wedding cupcakes and for a specific wedding dress cake I made. I'll try to find a picture of it and put it up here. That was back for my friend Christina's bridal shower, I believe. So I wanted to use this tip for my mom's wedding cupcakes. It took me a long time to find because I have 2 sets down here, 2 sets upstairs, and then tips everywhere upstairs. So these are my mom's wedding cupcakes. If you're going to travel with cupcakes, I definitely suggest buying these containers. I'll put the ones I think these are. I bought these back when I did a cupcake wedding 15 years ago. Yeah, I was 21 at the time, I think. So I'll link these below because they are great for transporting cupcakes. But if you pipe them right in here, throw them in the refrigerator, that way when you get to the venue, you can take them out without messing up the frosting. That's the best way to do it. So let's get on to frosting. I do have to color this, but I need some white also. So I'm gonna try to estimate how much frosting I'm gonna need to color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That should be more than enough. for 12 cupcakes. This tip here, don't go super high with it because it's supposed to look like a rose. So I'll show you what I mean, but you don't need as much frosting to frost with this tip. I'm gonna put in something bigger because that just looks like it's gonna be a mess. So depending on what you make and what tips you use, the amount of frosting you're gonna need is gonna be completely different every time. Buttercream frosting will last in your refrigerator for months. If anything, it'll just get like a funky flavor from the refrigerator, but if you pack it up real well, it should be good for a couple of weeks, if not longer. You can also freeze it. Okay, so I asked her for something to be able to match the color, so that's what we're going by. Do that. Blue and green. More blue than green. Start with less because you can't take it away, and you don't want to waste a bunch of frosting, which I do quite a bit. So a tiny bit of blue, 1 drop of green. Let's see. I did this with the fondant for her wedding flowers on her cake. It took forever, but I didn't go too far. Okay, so it's obviously not dark enough, but it's very similar color. It's just not dark. So more blue, a little bit of green. Obviously, you're still going to need a little bit more. Color's looking good. Obviously, if you're doing all one color, just do this right in the mixer. But I need white and red for my vendor cupcakes because it's a Polish festival. Pretty close. If you're doing aqua, always add more blue than green. That is looking good. Looks more the color on camera than in person. It definitely looks darker on the camera, which means it'll look good in pictures. But I say that's pretty darn close. Some of her flowers I did, pretty exact. Let's get to piping. You go to fill your bag, always fold over the top and either put it in a glass or over your hand so that the outside doesn't get dirty. My chef in high school said he'd give us points off if the outside of our bag was dirty. And also don't overfill, which I do quite often just because I want to try to get it all in there. But you can always refill. Push down as you go in. There you go. Now you pull up on it and squeeze to get all the frosting down. Outside of your bag isn't dirty. You can also use a freezer Ziploc is like your best bet so it won't split on you because the other ones are sometimes not as tough. So it's nice and clean. I'll try to get a good shot for you. This might take me a couple of tries because I haven't done this in a while. Start in the middle with this one. And you go around like that. Not great, so I'll probably redo that one, but that's the gist of it. If you mess up, just put it upside down in your bowl and scrape. I'm going to try and do a little build up in the middle. That's better. Build it up a little bit in the middle. Kind of let it drop. Don't have your tip right down on your cupcake as you're going. You let it drop slowly. Always let up pressure at the end, slowly, so that it tapers off. A refill, I might end up being 1 cupcake short of frosting. Oh, I might just make it. I made it. Just enough frosting for my mom's wedding cupcakes. Now, I'm going to show you a trick to get red frosting, which is next to impossible. But I'll show you my trick because I've had many requests for red things in frosting. So, that's next. So I took half of the frosting that was left. So this is not really going to be a measurable thing. I usually just add and mix until it's about right. You don't want too much cocoa in here because then you'll end up with like a mauve brownish red color, but you want just enough to get your red dye to work better. That's the trick. So I just add a little bit at a time. It all depends on what kind of cocoa you use too. This is a high fat cocoa powder, so you just want a little bit of brown in there. I always thought adding a bunch would be the best thing to do, but it ends up being too dark, like just too brown instead of red. I have a huge thing of red food coloring because red is like the hardest to get. You have to use a lot of dye, which is gross. I don't like eating dye. But fortunately, if you have just plain cupcakes, a lot of times people don't want them. They need to look appealing, and unfortunately, that means you need color. I can get like the natural dyes, but they're still not as eye-catching and bright as the red dye number 40. So it's still kind of like a pinky peach color, and we used all that red dye. Maybe we can do with a little bit more cocoa powder, but not too much. Looking red though. Same goes for if you're trying to make black frosting. Start with dark chocolate frosting in order to get black. Do not try making vanilla frosting black. You will use an entire bottle of black and it still will not be black. Found that out the hard way in high school when I wanted to make a ska cake. I'll probably be able to find that picture. I'll put that up there. My first ever experiment with black frosting. I add a tiny bit more cocoa powder, but not much. I think we're about red. Definitely sift your cocoa powder. I've made the mistake of not sifting before. Oof, what a lumpy mess. One more squirt of red. I'm gonna call it red. You think we used a lot of red now. You don't even want to know how much you would use if you didn't have cocoa powder in there. That's it. So there's our red frosting. I'm going to pipe these real quick, and then I might actually try one of my cupcakes after I get all these piped. So I did these cupcakes for vending. They're pretty close to the same size. I think I got 6 less chocolate cupcakes than normal. So they're a little bit bigger than the normal recipe. They're still only going to be 1 net carb, but they have these little toppers on them. So I'm going to use the same tip because I don't want a ton of frosting, but I want them to look real nice. So I kind of want to taste one of these. This is the first time putting them in here. I baked them for 20 minutes. I want to make sure they're not too dry. So I'm actually going to taste one of these once I'm all done piping. Make sure our lids fit. They look nice. Do them a little bit taller even. You can see a little bit of the cupcake that way too. That way I know which ones are chocolate, which ones are vanilla. Switcheroo. I was only able to do 6 and 5. Now for the red. I use the same bag, so it's going to kind of look cool. First one with white in the middle. I do that a lot with roses. I'll insert a picture here of the one wedding rose cupcakes I did that were like all different shades of purple. That was her color. Okay, got 6 and 6 there. So that was exactly 24 cupcakes. Yep, 12, 12, and 12. 24 cupcakes. Pretty good. So I'm going to try this guy I thought was a little bit too done. I am going to be serving these with forks at the thing I'm going to. So they can just eat it like this. I'll link these below too if anybody wants them. They come in all different colors. They're really nice. Now if your people aren't keto people, they might think it's too buttery for them. I love it. I mean, it tastes buttery and sweet. There's really no cooling effect, which I do get some from erythritol. I don't mind it that much. My mom hates it. So I try to use the least amount of erythritol possible in a lot of her baked goods. But this is delicious. And the cake isn't dry at all. So I will be coming at you with an updated vanilla cake recipe. I hate the short that I did. I'm not a shorts person. Not me. I knew it was going to be that way. I want you guys just to have the recipe like I intend you to have the recipe. But it's super good. I hope you guys enjoy this keto buttercream frosting recipe. Like I said, it's super versatile. You can add some coffee to it. You can add any kind of extract you want to it. You can add sifted cocoa powder and mint. You can add espresso powder. Literally anything you want, you can pretty much add to this frosting. And it's so delicious. I put it on my brownies, I put it on the cookies, I put it on cakes, cupcakes, you name it. It's so good. Let me know in the comments below if you use this recipe and you enjoy it, and how you use it and how you flavor it. Obviously the carb count in this is nothing because it's just powdered sweetener, so it's just a bunch of sugar alcohols and natural sweetener and just butter. So 0 carb, super light and fluffy keto buttercream frosting. Give me a thumbs up on the video so I know you enjoyed it. Thank you for subscribing. Subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, I'll be back with more keto recipe videos. Bye guys.